Hey everyone, welcome. It's been a minute. Sorry about that. um, I have, what can I say? Life. I see. I don't know where to look at the camera. I'd forgotten. You guys, if you've been here before, you know how long it took me to figure out how to look at the camera. Hello, hello. Um, yeah, I have been, lifing, laying low, doing the thing. I think it seems like the vibe of April, especially, was just for so many people like other things sort of taking over. And, you know, I don't think I know anybody who's not sort of felt just like that things are, I won't say topsy turvy, but maybe it's topsy turvy. I don't know. Or just somehow a little more difficult. But anyway, I'm not here to labor on any of that. I just wanted to do a video. I wanted to pop on and try to do a video. And I was like, what to do? What to do? I thought about doing a tag, but I mean, tags are fun, and I have a kind of a backlog of tags to do. But the thing about doing tags is it's not like very chatty. It's not like we're really catching up and I'm not telling you about anything that I've been doing, and they aren't always exclusively about what I've been reading or books or anything like that. I mean, they might be about bookish things, but they're not necessarily about, just what we've been reading. So I thought maybe I would try to do a kind of a wrap up and just tell you what I have read lately, and keep it short though. I mean, that's the hard part. And not the point of I here's the thing, I get caught in a cycle where I'm like, well, I should do a wrap up video and I should talk about what I've been reading, but it's like the more time goes on, the more things I have to talk about, the less time I can really spend talking about them. Um, and then it just starts to seem like kind of pointless, because the point should be to really talk more about the books. Anyway, yeah. How are you out there? How are you out there? Um, I don't know. Maybe there's going to be like 3 or 4 of you who even see this. I'm sure the algorithm is going to, yeah, but it'll do what it'll do. It doesn't really matter. It doesn't really matter. Um, Hopefully, just, friends are here, and we'll hang out and have a little chat. And I hate that it's a one-way conversation, kind of, but I'll tell you about what I read in March and April and what I'm reading now, and maybe about some plans, or that kind of thing. How does that sound? Does that sound good? Oh, okay. All right, then let's do it. Let's do it. Let's see. March. I've actually had really great time reading lately. I've been pretty lucky. Um, Nothing has really like completely missed the mark, and I have not DNF'd anything. Have not DNF'd anything, I think, since February. So that's a great thing. The first book that I read in March was, and I think I showed you this. My copy is all screwed up from the packaging. I read The Sleeping Car Porter by Suzette Mayr, and I read this with Heidi for my reading life. Really enjoyed doing this buddy read. This book. So many people have talked about this book, so I won't go on and on about it. And Heidi, I will link her review of it below because she just recently posted about it. But this won the Scotiabank Giller Prize last year in 2023. No, 2022. Sorry. Okay. And it was a Publisher's Weekly Top 20 of 2022. And last year it seemed like a lot of people were reading this book around this time last year, and that's when I put it on my TBR, and I bought it sometime in the summer. And this is a book about a black man in 1929. His name is Baxter, and he is a sleeping car porter, and in Canada. And when the book opens, he has been on a like a several day run, and he's exhausted, but he needs work. He wants to be a dentist, and he's saving money for dental school. And he's like only a very well, what we would think of him probably now as a small amount, but he's about $90 short of the amount he needs. And he decides that he's going to go to the office and to the scheduling or dispatching office and try to find another shift. And he picks up a shift for a 5-day transcontinental journey from, I believe it's Montreal, I think it's Montreal or Toronto to Vancouver. And he gets on this train, and this is the story of that journey, of Baxter on that journey. And in this, we learn obviously about his life as a train car porter and what that's like, and what the passengers are like, and what his dreams are, and what and get a glimpse into his life as a queer man in Canada in 1929, as a queer black man. And it's really I just thought it was fantastically well done. I loved the writing. One of the things that is a big theme in the book is Baxter's sleep deprivation, but he also loves to read, and he loves science fiction, and he's been reading weird tales, and he's been also reading a book called A Scarab from Jupiter. And this book has kind of a dystopian science fiction feel to it because of Baxter's sleeplessness, and because of how alien the passengers seem to him, and their lives and their needs and their strange habits and things that they things that they require, and problems that they have with their cabins. And then he's with the other porters, and the other porters are very different from him, and they're sort of talking about unionizing, and he feels a little left out of that. And then he's had a significant relationship that has kind of affected his job and the way he approaches his job as well. And then he has this dream of wanting to be a dentist. If you are at all squirmy about dental anything, maybe not. I mean, it's not terrible, but there's like plenty of dental talk in this book. But I just thought that I thought it was fantastic. It's not too long. It was a quick read, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. One thing that surprised me, I don't know why it surprised me, I think when I put this on my Goodreads list back a long time ago, it had a really high rating. I think it had like a 3.9 or a 3.8. And when I went to, set this up as like currently reading, because I still use Goodreads. I'm not hip to the kids who are on Storygraph, because I'm just lazy. So it's all good. But the rating's like a 3.4. And I was like, what happened? Why? So I looked at some of the reviews. I thought, well, there are some sex scenes, and people are weirdly squeamish, I guess, especially when it's a little bit open door, and they're not expecting it. And there was a little bit of that, but that really wasn't the problem. There were so many reviews that gave this 1 star, because this is a book about trains and a book about Canada and about traveling on a train across Canada, and people did not think that Suzette Mayr had focused enough on how wonderful trains are and how wonderful it is to take a transcontinental trip across Canada. And there were reviews that were like, well, I did that back in the 70s, and this was not at all my experience. Like, what? Just what? And then, no joke, there was one reviewer who actually said a lot of this guy's problems could have been solved if he'd just taken a nap. I mean, sometimes I really wonder how it is that people just don't get themselves like killed on a daily basis because they're so stupid, because they're just so dumb. I'm like, how did you even read this book and come away? And that's what she came away with. His problems could have been solved. This black man in 1929 who's basically treated, like a not even a second class citizen, but like a third class citizen, if anything, who is, who's constantly working, who really doesn't get any breaks unless he can get another porter to come and take over for him, and then he can't sleep. And this was the answer. He should take a nap. Honestly, I worry about humanity. I think maybe AI is going to take over. I'm not sure. It could happen. Anyway, enough about that. So I read that. That was really good. And I've already spent like 10 minutes talking about it. So this may be the longest video ever. I read The Hunter by Tana French. I was very excited about this, and it was okay. It was okay. If you like Tana French and if you liked The Searcher, you will probably like this. I thought it was pretty good. My thing about Tana French is, while I'm reading Tana French, it's like, oh, it's good. It's really good. I mean, I keep turning the pages, and the one thing that she does just so spectacularly well, she does character development really well, and she does atmosphere. And so I really just love her descriptions of being out sort of in the Irish countryside and being in this little village and the characters that are there. But this takes us back to, you have to read The Searcher before you read this. Otherwise, this book will not make sense. So this is a second in a series, in her Cal Hooper series. And I think there are just too many things that won't make much sense if you haven't read the first book. But so I'm actually not gonna talk too much about what this was about. It was good. I felt like it dragged a little bit in the middle. I didn't feel like the stakes were quite high enough. There were, if I wanted to play like it was me writing this book, there were some things I probably would have done differently, but that's okay. But I really enjoyed it. And I mean, I'm always going to be a Tana French fan. I'm always going to probably buy anything she writes because she writes so well. And even if it's not perfect, it's still better than a lot of things out there. Another book that I read was The Violin Conspiracy, and I'll have to pop it up because it was an e-read, by Brendan Slocumb. And this was a mystery, and it's about a man, and I cannot remember the character's name because I read it back at the beginning of March, who he is a violinist. He is I guess like you call him a competitive violinist. I guess he's a professional. He's a professional violinist, and he has a Stradivarius violin, and it gets stolen this is not a spoiler. This is the start of the book. It's the beginning of the book, and the violin is stolen. And then the book sort of tells the story. I should say, he's a black man, which is unusual. It's unusual to see a black violinist, unfortunately. And this is a big theme in the book. And the book then tells sort of the backstory of how he got the violin, and also maybe who might have stolen it, kind of looking into who might have stolen it. And there are two candidates. One candidate, I say candidate like a group, it's a group, would be somebody in his immediate family, his mother, his aunts, uncles, cousins, in his family. He thinks that it's possible that one of them could have stolen it for the insurance money. On the other side, there is another family that technically they are related to him as well, because it's the family of his great-great-grandfather, who is the man who got the violin from the man who owned him. And uh, and who was also his father. So very complicated. And so now the people who, I guess the slave owning family, the forebears, no, the not the forebears. The forebears are the people who came before. The people, I don't know, the modern day people, because I can't think of what word that is that I want. The progeny of the slave owning family want the violin returned to them because they say that it was stolen. And so it sort of goes through the whole story of, though, how he became a violinist in the first place and how he became interested in music, and also sort of trying to solve the mystery of what has happened to the violin. And I would say that overall, it was a really, really good book, very interesting. Brendan Slocumb himself is a professional classical musician. I don't think he played the violin, though. I think he plays a different instrument. I'll have to check on that. And then he decided to, turn his talents to writing, and he definitely does have talent. I really thoroughly enjoyed this book. And but the one thing I will say is the mystery was the least interesting part of the book. It really could have been, to me, I think it was the strongest parts of the book were just the parts about him dealing with, his love of music, for one thing, how much he loved to play, the way that Slocumb writes about the different pieces of music. And I was like, he very wonderfully, he made a playlist for his own book that you can listen to on Spotify, I know for sure, maybe in some other places as well, that have all the pieces of music that the character plays or is practicing in the book. And that is just fantastic. And the story of how he relates to his family and about his mentor and how he becomes a musician, and with what the family, is dealing with this other family, trying to come back and try to claim the violin, and that question of ownership and property of things and people, and just this legacy of that. That just by itself is incredibly interesting. I mean, that to me was the real heart of the story, and the mystery was kind of like, okay, whatever. But I highly recommend it. I thought that it was really fantastically done. He's a really strong writer, and that was his debut novel, so great. He gets to be a classical musician and a terrific author. Some people are so lucky. Okay. The next book that I read, and I won't go on about this because I actually did a video about this, which I will link in the description box below, because this was a buddy read with Randy Ray at the Literate Texan, and this is Terms of Endearment by Larry McMurtry. We had a great time buddy reading this, and it was really fun to get to just talk with Randy about the book. It's quite different. This was written in 1974. It's quite different than the movie. There are things about the movie that are not the same here. Really, the book is much more, although it's about both Aurora and Eva. Aurora is the mother and Eva is the daughter. If you have seen the movie Terms of Endearment, Aurora was Shirley MacLaine and Eva was Deborah Winger. And about their relationship, Aurora is like in her late 40s and Eva is in her early 20s, and she is newly married to Flap and is pregnant and going to have a child. And Aurora has many, many suitors. And I would say the book really, the first part of the book, it's like the first 3/4 of the book are really about Aurora and Eva, but mostly about Aurora. And she is such a wonderful character. And I don't know, McMurtry just writes women so very well. You know, they're complex and interesting and contrary and just human. I mean, they're just human, and it's really wonderful. And then the last part of the book is about did I say Did I say Eva? Emma. I think I said Eva. Emma. Okay. Well, I'm going a little crazy. About Emma is about this. The last part of the book is about Emma and her life elsewhere. She moves away with her husband to Nebraska because he is a professor, and then sort of, I won't give away the ending if you haven't seen the movie, but about her time there. It's just a really wonderful book. This is the second book in the Houston. Well, what would it be if it's 5 books? I can't think now. Quintology? I don't know. There's 5 books. The first one is called Moving On. There's then All My Friends Are Going to Be Strangers. Oh no, this is the 3rd book. Then Terms of Endearment. Then I think Some Can Whistle, and then The Evening Star. I think those are the 5 books in that series. Anyway, highly recommend. You know me, I love Larry McMurtry. I'm always going to recommend Larry McMurtry. And then let's see. That can't be it for March. Yes, I'm looking at my Goodreads because but March was very busy. I mean, work has just been very busy, so reading has been kind of crazy, kind of wonky. In April, I did another buddy read with Sonia at An Enthusiastic Reader, and we read Eventide by Kent Haruf. This is the 2nd book, and the reflection's really bad on the plastic cover. Sorry about that. This is the 2nd book in his Holt series, set in Holt, Colorado. This book deals with some of the same characters that were in Plainsong. The 3 books are Plainsong, Eventide, and Benediction. And it brings back the McPherson brothers, who are the older brothers who owned the farm that's outside of Holt. And it also brings back Tom Guthrie and Maggie, who were main characters in Plainsong and sort of step to the side a little bit, but they make an appearance, but step off to the side a bit in this book. And then it also deals with some other families in Holt, Colorado. And this is it's just his writing is so wonderful. But the main story, I think, in the book is really about Raymond McPherson, one of the McPherson brothers, and about what happens to him. And then there's a family that's just sort of very, very poor, and they have a very hard time. And sort of the story of them and their social worker. He just writes quiet slice of life type books that are about real people with real problems, but also just, moments of quiet grace and humor. Oh, and Victoria Robidoux also comes back here, and she now has her baby. And so she is also, she's also in this book as well, but she's a bit more off stage in this book, more so than she is in Plainsong. And as you can see, this is an autographed copy, which I bought used through, look at his signatures, kind of cool, which I bought used a long time ago from Powell's, because Powell's used to have that they still sell used books, but they used to have, sometimes they would have autographed copies. So this is an autographed first edition, which actually does not make it worth anything at all. It may be worth a little bit since Kent Haruf is deceased, but for the most part, those don't tend to be as valuable as you might think. But that doesn't matter, because what's inside the book, the words, are valuable and worth reading. So I highly recommend. I will also link Sonia's video below that she just did last Friday, and she talked about that a little bit. Okay, I'm trying not to make this too long. I'm trying not to make it too long. And yes, I'm still looking at my list. Okay, I read another book called Little Monsters by a writer named Adrienne Brodeur, who she wrote a memoir, and I don't remember the name of the memoir, but it was about her relationship with her mother, and I believe when she was like a teenager or like an older teen, or maybe like in her early 20s, and about how she kind of helped her mother, or not helped her, but kind of covered for her when she was having an affair. And it's sort of about the dynamic, I guess, that she had with her mother and with this affair, and then maybe some with her relationship with her father. I believe his name was Peter Brodeur, I'm pronouncing it correctly, who was a famous journalist. And Adrienne Brodeur was a literary agent or editor, literary editor. She was a literary editor for a long time, and now this is her first novel. And I picked this up kind of to study it because it's about a family. It's a multi-point of view novel about a man who is why can't I think of the name of it? He studies whales. He's a whaleologist. He studies whales. Anyway, like not oceanographer. Anyway, he studies whales. And he's a very famous man. And then he has 2 kids. He has a son and a daughter. And his wife died in childbirth when she was having the daughter. Not a spoiler. And they're grown now. The kids are grown now. And it is I believe it's his 70th birthday. And he wants to have this big to-do because he believes he's made this great breakthrough in his research. But it also happens that he is bipolar and has kind of stopped taking his medication. So the book is very much about sort of this family dynamic. The daughter is an artist, kind of a free spirit, feminist. The son is married to a very wealthy woman, and he's getting ready to run as a Republican for a Democratic seat in Congress. They live on Cape Cod. That was another thing. I love to read books set on Cape Cod. And so this is sort of a book about their family dynamic and family secrets. And, it's just one of those. And it's multi-point of view. And I was really interested in it for the structure and the story because it's, sounded somewhat similar to something I'm trying to work on. And one of the things they say is that you kind of need to know what your comps are. They call them comps, which is like, what is your work? What would it compare to that's already out there? And I thought, well, this could be a comp. So I read it, and it was okay. It was only okay. It to me, kind of fell apart. It just didn't quite work in the end, and the characters didn't really have much of an arc. Yeah, I don't know. In a way, it's one of those things where, I enjoyed reading it, and I gave it 2 stars, it's okay. It's okay. I enjoyed reading it. I read it quickly. It didn't trip me up. I didn't like roll my eyes or anything, but it's interesting to me because, especially thinking about, here is somebody who has been an editor and who has read manuscript after manuscript and who reads a lot herself. If you look at her Instagram or you go out and you read some interviews with her, she's very well read. It's interesting to me to see that, just in terms of like, you can really know a lot, and writing a book is hard. writing a book is difficult and getting it right is difficult. And, also she's like, well, she didn't get it right for me, but she maybe got it right for some other people who didn't care about things that I cared about, because I was obviously also looking at it through a different lens. But I just found that interesting. And I found that kind of satisfying in a way to know that it's not easy for anybody. There's no like secret formula that says, or that, well, you know this. And that's how, even writers that you love and whose books that you can read and say, oh, I love their books. And then when another book comes out and you're like, what is this? What happened? What happened is writing is hard. So I thought it was a good read. If you like family dramas and you like books set on Cape Cod, this is a good one. This is a good one to read. It's got that, kind of big houses and it's kind of that summer drama dynamic, and it's just an easy read. It would be a good one to take to the beach, I think, for sure. For People April, I had all these books that I lined up to read because I was very excited about some of the events in April, and then, didn't talk to you at all in April, but I picked this one up for People April. And this is Shakespeare Was a Woman and Other Heresies, How Doubting the Bard Became the Biggest Taboo in Literature by Elizabeth Winkler. I heard about this book on Elizabeth Winkler's sister's channel, Caroline Winkler. And if you haven't watched Caroline Winkler, she is just the cutest. She is so funny. She mostly does like interior design, but she also just does like chatty life vlogging. And she's just hilarious. And Elizabeth Winkler is her older sister. And in 2019, Elizabeth, who is a journalist, published an essay in The Atlantic, proposing that Shakespeare could have been, I'm not going to remember who it was. Let's see if I can find it. No, I'm not going to be able to find it. Anyway, that it was a woman, an Italian woman, a woman who was an Italian poet, living in the same time. And, she has a degree in English. She studied at Princeton and Stanford. So we're not talking about, if that matters to you, we're not talking about somebody who came out of nowhere and just decided to throw this theory out there. But she really got run into the ground for this article. And it turns out that, I remember this question coming up. I remember hearing about this when I was in school. So, I knew it existed. But, I guess it turns out that mostly Shakespeare scholars, meaning people in English departments, in literature departments, absolutely refuse to discuss the question of, or even entertain the question that Shakespeare, the historical Shakespeare, was not Shakespeare. And what's fascinating, after she kind of, went and licked her wounds for a few months, she kind of popped her head back out and said, why is this such a controversial thing? She got compared to a Holocaust denier. A Shakespeare scholar compared her to a Holocaust denier. That's just insane. And so she decided that she's not like me. I would just be like, well, I'm going to go sell shoes somewhere because obviously I can't do this. I would just freak. But she did not freak. She leaned into the question and said, I'm going to find out why there's so much passion around this question. And that's exactly what she did in this just incredibly well-researched and fascinating book that talks about the historical Shakespeare and who that person was, and then about the history of like the first appearance of doubt, of about who was Shakespeare, or references to Shakespeare that clearly didn't seem to be referring to a specific person, but to Shakespeare as a being, as a pseudonym or as a stand-in for somebody who was writing. And then she goes through many of the and she talks about the Shakespeare question, which kept coming up in the 18th century, again with the Victorians, again in the early 20th century, about all the people who were on what's called the anti-Stratfordian side, who believe they don't think William Shakespeare was Shakespeare, and the Stratfordian side, who are the people, mostly scholars, who absolutely believe that Shakespeare was Shakespeare, or if they don't believe it, they just refuse to talk about it. It was fantastic. I couldn't put it down. I mean, it was like a literary thriller is what this is. It just was so fantastic. And she writes with a style that I myself would compare to the way somebody like Janet Malcom, who, if you have been here for 5 minutes, I love Janet Malcom. Last year for People April, I read her book, The Silent Woman, about Sylvia Plath and Ted Hughes. And it turns out that Janet Malcom is also one of Elizabeth Winkler's heroes. And I'm not surprised. And I look forward to reading what Elizabeth Winkler does next, because I think that she could definitely step in and, if not fully fill those shoes, help to at least kind of fill a Janet Malcom shaped hole in my life. So that was fantastic. Let's see what's next. For Trans Girl April, I read, because I guess that was just kind of a non-event this year. Just too bad. I had books lined up, but it's fine because I had the books already and I still want to read them. But I ended up reading When We Were Sisters by Fatimah Asghar. I'm sorry, Fatimah Asghar, for mispronouncing your name. Which was just really fantastic. It's a book about 3 sisters who are orphaned. Their mother dies, or has died of cancer. Their father then dies unexpectedly. He is murdered. Not a spoiler. And they are put into the care of their mother's brother. And their mother was estranged from her brother. And her brother is married to, they are Indian, they are Muslim, and they're Pakistani. I'm sorry. This is going to be the part where I'm going to have to cut this part out. They were estranged. The uncle is married to a white woman, and he has 2 sons with her, and they are really not necessarily accepting of the girls, and he installs them in an apartment and basically takes the money that they are getting from social services for their care and uses it to do things for his other family while they grow up in this apartment in a not great, I guess, neighborhood in somewhere in New Jersey. It's not really clear exactly where they are. And this story is told in the first person by the youngest sister, and she tells the story of growing up in this environment and her relationship with her sisters and what it's like. And I would say from this, you know, is very different than like the book that I read last year was Nevada, where it was very much like of an on the surface book about somebody a man who had transitioned to be a woman, and about another man who is questioning his own who he is and what he is. Um, in this case, the narrator, and I'm sorry, yes, I cannot remember the name. I cannot remember the narrator's name at this point in time. But the narrator, um, this is just something that part of it comes out like through what her appearance is, and then it becomes their appearance. Um, and she just sort of grows up, you know, maybe having, I think, like a little too much testosterone. But then that sort of, like, in a way becomes a way to be freer and to be somebody who can have relationships with many different types of people. Um, you know, sometimes with men, sometimes with women, um, just very gender fluid, just gender fluid. Uh, and the book, so Fatimah Asghar is a poet, and it's very clear that she is a poet. The book is just beautifully written, beautifully told. I really loved it. Mostly though, it's just a story about a family. Um, I just thought that it was fantastically well done. Um, and I wish that I was doing it more justice. But this video is already at 41 minutes, so I'm gonna keep going. Um, I was buddy reading kind of this Amy and Isabelle by Elizabeth Strout. I reread this. This was a reread for me. I was supposed to be buddy reading this with Heather at Heather Reads, but we never did seem to be able to connect so that we could discuss the book offline. So, Heather, I'm still waiting for you to email me and tell me how to contact you so we can discuss the book. So I won't talk about it. Let me see if I can talk to Heather first. All I will say is that I probably enjoyed this even more the second time around. I just found myself underlining and starring and just really, just absolutely loving being with Elizabeth Strout. I cannot wait for her next book to come out. You all know I'm a super fan, so we won't go on about that. And then, let's see. I think this is it. Okay. I read this. This was really fun. This was loaned to me by a friend of mine in my writers group. This is called Charlesgate Confidential, and the author is Scott von Doviak. And this was just a great fun. This is a hard case crime book. It's a mystery. It is essentially, Van Doviak took the Isabella Gardner museum heist that happened, I think, in 1990, and kind of transposed it or changed it and moved it into the 1940s. And this book has 3 timelines. So there's the heist in 1946. There is then in 1985, there is a college journalist who starts to investigate the heist. And then in the present day, there is a murder in the Charlesgate Hotel, which is also kind of a character in its own right. In the original timeline, it's a dorm in the journalist's timeline, and now it is a high-end condo community. There's a murder, and it turns out that everything is somehow connected. And so it goes through 3 timelines. It's just really smooth. I think doing books with 3 timelines, you can just, sometimes one timeline can be more interesting than the others, or you could, the author gets bogged down in one timeline, or it gets confusing. I would say this doesn't ever get confusing. The pace just moves really quickly, highly entertaining. If you love Boston, if you like art, if you just like fun kind of, it's like a noirish art heist, just really great. I highly recommend it. It feels great. And then, yeah, I will save the next book because the other books that I read, one more book. The Hotel by Elizabeth Bowen. I'm actually not quite finished with this, but I am reading this as I've got like 30 more pages or so. I am reading this as part of the Elizabeth Bowen read along that Sarah at Hardcover Hearts and Leo at Leo's Little Book Life are hosting. And we will be reading six different books by Elizabeth Bowen, and this was the first one. And I have not read Elizabeth Bowen except for some of her short stories. So I was just really excited to kind of dip into that. And this started a couple of weeks ago, and it will go all the way through August, reading, I believe, 6 of her novels, and then or 5 of her novels, and then several of her short stories. I'm looking back there because I have some of the books piled back there. Okay, so I think that's it. I'll save. I read one other book, but I read that this month, and I've started some other things, and I've got a pile of possibilities, but maybe I'll come back and do another video. Yeah. Maybe I'll make it. I'm not going to make any promises. It could be June, and I'll be talking to you, or it could be next week. I wish I could promise, but that's it. So let me know what's been going on with you. Let me know if any of these sound interesting to you, if you think you might read some of them, or if you have read some of them. You let me know what you're reading. Tell me how you are. I've missed you all. I should have said that at the start. I have missed you all, and I look forward to hearing from you. I hope that you're still out there. And yeah, and that's it. I guess that's all. And then I'll be back. And thank you so much for being here. And yeah, I will talk to you hopefully sooner rather than later. Okay, take care. Bye.